Hello and welcome everybody. This is Fitzy and I promised you in my YouTube hub video to do a tutorial on how to make the album I showed you. I'll be starting out, it's going to be it's going to be a 2 or 3 video series kind of thing because it's kind of a big project actually. And I just wanted to start out with the spine or the cover binding, so because that's kind of manageable amount of technique and stuff to show in one video. What I do is for projects that have a size using papers letter sized or A4, I usually put everything like in a document sleeve. Those I picked up like wherever I find them at dollar stores for 50 cents or such. And it holds like all the pattern papers, all the cardstocks I need, all the paraphernalia, all the whatever I find and want to use. So luckily enough, I found a paper pad I have had for ages. It's an old Tilda actually that matches pretty well with my designer series or my designer papers from you guessed it, the dollar store. I went to 2 different locations of the same chain and I had no luck getting another pad, so I'm like kind of improvising what to do. And yeah, I will make good on that promise to send out or to actually give away one of the pads, but it might not be the same. So this holds like all the papers and all the cardstock and all the ephemera I wanted to use and whatever. We don't need that right now. What we need is our covers, our cover papers, our sticky fabric for the spine, our cover chipboard, and the corner rounder I was using for the project. What we start with is actually the spine and the sticky paper or the sticky fabric that I have. I cut it down to 4 by 7 and something, so my covers are well wrapped. We turn it around. What I'm going to do is I'm taking my spine piece and I mark the middle on both ends. Oops. Then I can go in and fold back. Oops. This is like the demo effect, right? And then I can go in, pull up my carrier sheet, go in and fold it down in the middle, about in the middle. It's not all straight because I cut it with my scissors. So, okay. So now I have the middle of my fabric, I have the middle of my spine, and I kind of eyeball the middle of the length. It's more important to actually find, you know, a straight line because there is a pattern obviously on the spine piece. So, and then you want to go in and actually seal that down on the spine, so you can pull out the carrier sheet and have an even surface. Then you go in, have this right side up, and oops, I'm sorry, kind of sticky mess. Then you go in and use your back pieces, and as long as you do have one left over, you can go ahead and put this next to the spine and then push up against it if you don't trust your visuals, because you do want to have like an 1/8 of an inch gap between the spine and the cover for mobility later. So this is, I've done this a couple times, so I'm kind of pretty good about this. And then you just go ahead and actually fold this over real tight. Oops. And this basically is how you put your spine on your covers. See? I always forget to take off the price tag, which is kind of ink because it might actually show through, but my papers are kind of stiff, so it shouldn't. What I could have done before was around my edges, or my corners, actually, which I'm going to do now. So what I did is I went ahead and took my cover paper and stuck some double-sided sticky sheet on it to make this fast and easy, because usually I use bookbinder's glue, but that's kind of, you know, kind of messy. Now if you have like a grain to your, or like a direction to your sticky whatever spine, whatever you put on your spine, you will want to pay attention to where is your front and where is your back, because otherwise you might end up with the pattern upside down. So this is my front. What I do is I actually really use my grid on my cutting board, on my cutting pad, to see where I want my paper to go, because as you can see with the fabric, this kind of bows out and it's kind of like not really even. If I try to put my paper on, this could be a mess. Now you want to make sure you center this, so you can use the cutting mat too. And once again, I will go in and pull up the liner only like 1 inch or 1.5 inches, just to expose some sticky. And then I go in and center my paper, line it up with my grid, and push down. So I have like 1 inch on the top and 1 inch on the bottom. And then I just pull out and stick it down. I can turn it around. And what I do for comfort is I only go to my ledge, and then I fold back the lining sheet so I don't run the risk of actually, you know, like exposing all the sticky and getting stuck every, you know, step of the way. So what you do now is you go in and prime your paper, sticky and all, for what's to come. The liner might actually tear, which is not a problem. You go ahead and just, you know, prime that paper what it's supposed to do, to what it's supposed to do. And with that rounded corner, it's kind of not as easy as with a regular mitered corner. So what you want to do is go in, just gonna draw some lines, and depending on the radius of your rounded corner, you want to cut like sun rays like this, and then fold over from the middle out. I had 3 cuts on my other album, but I thought it was kind of didn't look so nice, so now I'm basically doing 4. This I usually eyeball a lot. It's just, you know, so you can see what I'm doing. Then you go in and cut it like pretty much to where the liner broke, not all the way to the chipboard, but like an 1/8 or a 1/16 out. You want it pretty close because you don't want a lot of, you know, nudges peeking out, but you want it to close around the corner. And then you go in, or I go in, and cut like in a 1/2 inch distance from the chipboard, and pull up the liner, get as much as you can, and pull up. I use my fingernail. You can use a bone folder to actually stick it to the edge of the chipboard, and then it's kind of, where do I have? So, and then you pull up, oops, and just, you know, bring it up, and sorry, hands in the way, and stick it all the way over. Do that on both sides. Okay, once you got your corners done, you just go ahead and basically do what you do with all the other book binding you've done or haven't, as you take your bone folder and you go in flat from the outside, pushing down, and always start in the middle and spread out to the side, because if you start at one side and you have like a thinner paper that you might actually kind of stretch, you are gonna be ending up with the paper moving out because there's too much length. So what you really want to do is start in the middle and go to your edges, and then same in the in pushing down. It's like you start like at an angle, pushing in, and actually, you know, pulling that out. Usually, honestly, I start with the top and the bottom and then fold in, but with the corners rounded and this kind of, you know, ray thing going on here, it doesn't really matter, because later when you cover it up, you will cover it till here anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference. Okay, I'll show you again. Pull off the liner. You can actually go in, and if your chipboard is sturdy enough, you can just fold it up against the table to get it on the chipboard. But then you really want to go in from the middle, pushing it against the chipboard, and usually you'll go in from the outside in. Push it down in the middle, towards the middle, and at an angle, lay it down. And that way you will not have, you know, paper. I have very sturdy cover paper here, but I also do it, you know, with the wet glue. That in addition makes the paper pliable, but also will enable the paper to stretch the fibers, and that's could be a mess. So you always want to go from the middle to the edges. Now this is basically what your cover looks. Then you go in and actually take your bond folder and even out those nicks and that you get from sturdy paper on the rounded corner. And this is how you get a neat cover, actually. Repeat it for the back, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so now actually our outer cover is done, but for embellishments. And I can go in with, let me get my binding piece. Because next thing you do is you put in the binding. And the hidden hinge binding is really easy, because all you do is fold up a piece of paper accordion style. For my 4 pages, actually, an A5 piece of paper, which is 21 by 14.8 centimeters, is the length is what makes the binding. So I take an A5 piece of paper and start out at 1.5 inches with my first crease. I have a metric board, so this is kind of like and then I go in and crease at, or score at every 1/2 inch till I get to a point where I have like 1.5 inches left. Oops, sorry. So what I have now, you could have turned it every which way, but what I have is like 1.5 inches and a little less, and a lot of even spaces in between. I start out with folding it up and down. So this is going to be binding, binding, gap, binding, binding, gap, binding, binding, gap, binding, binding, gap. What we'll do now is fold up and make sure you are strictly perpendicular, that you don't veer at an angle. So you really need straight folds. Again, fold up your gap, fold up your gap, fold up your gap. You can see I kind of have a crooked score line here, so I go in and straighten that. You always want to fold up the gaps. Gap. As you can see, I really have to correct my folds. Fold up the gap. And fold up the gap. You basically jump the bindings fold up the gap, and fold up the gap. Okay, then you go ahead and just fold out into a mount fold your bindings, which is easy because you can just pull. Sorry, take this one. You can just pull over to where you have a B on one side and get the B on the other. As I said, make sure you're absolutely straight because it doesn't make a huge impact on 1/2 inch. But once you have your binding in, you'll see that it has to be totally straight. I mean, we will cut it down because it's still too wide yet. But imagine putting an 8-inch page on it. That hair of a slide will translate into like 1/2 inch at the width of 8. And you don't want that, believe me. So what you get is this, which is exactly what we want. We have 4 bindings, 3 gaps, and a lot of white space to work with. I'll be going in erasing this, and what I will be doing is I'll be putting sticky tape on one side of my bindings to make it actually my binding piece. See you in a minute. So this is what your binding looks like when it's all stuck together. I'm going to clean this up now by actually cutting it down and evening out my piece here, which is like 1 1/4, and I have 1 1/2 here, so I go in. It's just the neat freak in me. You don't have to do this because we'll cover it up anyways. It's just bugging me. So. And then I go in and measure, actually, if I can find my ruler, how much I need to cut, because my pages will be 14 centimeters, which will be this wide. And I don't want my binding to go higher than my pages, because then I can't actually stick them on. This is kind of a tough one for my little guillotine here, and it hasn't been cutting like totally straight for a while, so just measure this. Go in. Yeah, that's kind of a piece of work here. And to make sure, I kind of lost my finger guard a while back. Can't tell you why. So what I do to make putting my pages on easier is I take my smallest corner rounder, which is an 1/8, and go in and actually chomp this off. Okay, so now what I do to make this fast and easy is I use the whole back. You want to reinforce those creases big time, because this is the more mobility you have here, the better your pages flip. I go ahead and I use a wide tape, a wide double-sided tape on the back of this to stick it down. You can use whatever glue you want. You just want to make sure that you really use an adhesive that works, because if this piece comes loose, God forbid, the whole album is, is trashed, because this is like the core part. You really want that to work. So what I have is like a It's like a 3.5 inch wide sticky thing, and that I use for stuff like that. And I try to, you know, put it down halfway decently, but yokely dokely. So this is the core of the oven, and you want to go in and kind of center this, as it's like a lot shorter than the rest. And then again, what you can do to make sure it's absolutely in the middle of all things, you know, of all things, you go in and mark your middle. Draw a line if you absolutely want to do this and don't trust your eyeballing skills. And the middle here is like in between those two binding things. And you go in and just fold back to the middle. Of that. Of that gap, and go in and place your paper like where you want it. Make sure to be even on the top and on the bottom. Okay, my camera is too close in. So line up your lining paper. Let go. Hold on the side that is still lined, so you can still see this. Okay, and stick down the rest. Make sure to only stick down the gaps that are on the spine. Okay, make sure to really only stick down the gaps on the spine, because you don't want to stick down these parts yet. Because as we go in and adhere our spine here, we need to make sure we have the possibility pushed down into that crease between spine and cover panel, because that is what's making our album wiggly or movable, or our, you know, our covers able to move on the hinge. Otherwise you're going to fix this down and it's not going to work. So you go ahead and just use your bone folder to really gently push into that gap. Okay, and slowly fold up your cover. So what you'll have is a cover with a spine, with a hidden hinge, as straight as possible. It's not straight and I'm not happy with myself. Okay, well, just gonna dress this up nicely, or rip out and repeat. I can't decide yet. I think I'll rip out and repeat. And then you go ahead and take the inner cover paper and cover up. Basically, I usually cover up. I didn't do that in the other album. I don't know why, but usually I cover up really to the crease, so I get like a very, very clean finish to my book. You can always go in if your flap is long enough here, which it should be, but you know, because I messed it up, and put it here, but I don't think I like it that well. So I usually go ahead and just, you know, stay away from the crease for like a 16th and just put it down like this. I'll show you the finished cover once I rip this out and, you know, improved it. See you in a bit. Okay, so this is basically our book without the pages. Cleans up pretty nice if you know how to do it. I even managed to match up the pattern for the lining piece. I stuck that down with liquid glue because I like that better, because I have kind of a minimum of mobility to wiggle around. So this is part 1 of the album. This one goes to my goddaughter for her 2nd birthday. And I hope you liked the video, and I'll see you back here soon for part 2 with the pages and how to attach them to our hidden binding spine.